Ladies and gentlemen, if you enjoy my video, please click the like button and share the video. It is the only way the YouTube algorithms really notices me. I will be very grateful to you. Danger Zone. Why you should never say an evil spirit's name. Scary story, published by Scare Fiction. Read for you by Scare Fiction. Chapter 1. Echoes of Laughter and Screams. Sarah gripped the steering wheel, knuckles white against the worn leather. The midday sun glared down, transforming the dusty back road into a shimmering mirage. 10 years. A decade since the last time she'd been here, in this desolate corner of Maine, where silence now reigned like a suffocating blanket. Back then, laughter echoed through the trees, a constant companion on their childhood adventures. Today, an unsettling quiet hung heavy in the air, broken only by the rhythmic hum of the tires. "Whoa, Nellie!" Ben, perpetually the jokester, leaned across the back seat, startling Sarah. "You look like you're about to drive us straight into that dust devil down the road." She forced a laugh, the sound brittle in the car. "Just taking in the scenery," she lied, eyes darting away from the familiar landmarks that pricked at the scabbed-over memories. The abandoned billboard advertising Big Al's Barbecue, a frequent pit stop on their childhood escapades, loomed like a skeletal reminder of what once was. A wave of nausea washed over her. Across the back, Jessica and Mark were locked in a playful banter. Their laughter, a melody of forgotten joy, sliced through the oppressive silence. Sarah envied their ease, their ability to exist in the present without the weight of the past dragging them down. "Hey, check it out." Ben's voice cut through her reverie. He pointed out the window, his excitement tinged with a hint of nervous energy. "There it is, the old Blackwood mansion. Still looks like it could house a family of bats and a resident ghost or two." A shiver danced down Sarah's spine, goosebumps prickling her skin. The Blackwood mansion, once a source of thrilling expeditions and spooky dares, it now stood sentinel against the encroaching woods, its boarded-up windows like sightless eyes staring out at them. Vines, thick and grasping, strangled the once proud facade, reclaiming the structure for nature's dominion. "Haunted house," Jessica mused, a playful smile on her lips. "Remember all those crazy stories we used to tell about Emily?" The air in the car grew thick, a collective silence descending upon them. Emily, the name hung heavy, a tangible weight in the confined space. It was a shared code, a word that evoked unspoken guilt and a deep-seated dread. The whispers, the chilling tales woven around the young girl who vanished from the mansion all those years ago echoed in Sarah's mind. Mark cleared his throat, the sound strained. "Come on, guys. That was like forever ago. Just local legends, nothing more." But Sarah knew better. The image of Emily, a wisp of a girl with eyes that held a universe of fear, flickered before her closed eyelids. A single memory, raw and horrifying, surfaced from the depths of her subconscious, a frantic scramble through the woods, the taste of metallic fear in their mouths, and the chilling screams swallowed by the relentless night. Shaking off the unwelcome flashback, Sarah plastered a smile on her face, a mask that felt heavy and unconvincing. "Yeah, right," she agreed, her voice lacking conviction. "Just childhood fantasies fueled by bad horror movies." However, the words felt hollow on her tongue. "Speaking of which," she continued, desperate to break the tension, "aren't we supposed to be having a picnic?" A little trip down memory lane. Mark and Jessica exchanged a hesitant look. But Ben, ever the impulsive one, jumped at the suggestion. "Picnic it is. Let's see what kind of creepy crawlies have made a home in that old place." A knot of dread tightened in Sarah's stomach. This picnic, A seemingly lighthearted gathering felt more like a morbid pilgrimage. The past, she realized with a chilling certainty, had a way of refusing to stay buried forever. As their laughter faded on the wind with each turn of the tires, the weight of their shared secret pressed down on Sarah. The Blackwood mansion loomed larger in the distance, a decaying monument to their youth and the darkness they'd tried so desperately to forget. The picnic baskets might hold sandwiches and drinks, but Sarah knew a far more sinister truth. The mansion held secrets waiting to be unearthed, and the echoes of laughter might soon be replaced by screams. Chapter 2: A Descent into Decay. The dusty road stretched ahead like a forgotten ribbon, swallowed by the hungry jaws of the encroaching woods. Sunlight struggled to penetrate the dense canopy of trees, casting long, skeletal shadows that danced across the cracked asphalt. The air hung heavy, thick with the scent of damp earth and decaying leaves, an oppressive blanket that stole the breath from Sarah's lungs. As they ventured deeper, the silence became a living entity, punctuated only by the rhythmic crunch of tires on gravel and the occasional snap of a twig under an unseen creature's weight. An unsettling feeling gnawed at Sarah's gut, a premonition that whispered of danger lurking just beyond the veil of trees. The Blackwood mansion finally emerged from the woods, a sight that sent chills cascading down her spine. The once grand structure was now a decaying shadow of its former glory. Peeling paint clung desperately to the warped boards, while broken windows gaped like empty sockets, staring accusingly at their approach. Ivy, like skeletal fingers, clawed its way up the facade, slowly consuming the building whole. Ben, ever the optimist, whistled a jaunty tune as he hopped out of the car, his bravado masking a hint of unease that flickered in his eyes. Wow, this place looks worse than it did in the stories. Jessica shuddered, pulling her jacket tighter around her. "It's colder here," she mumbled, her voice tinged with a tremor. Mark, oblivious to the growing tension. "Come on, scaredy cats. Let's find a decent spot for the picnic before the mosquitoes carry us off." As they ventured closer to the mansion, the unease intensified. A sudden shift in the wind sent a flurry of leaves swirling around their feet, creating an unsettling whispering sound. Sarah swore she caught a fleeting glimpse of movement in a broken window upstairs, a flash of white that vanished as quickly as it appeared. A shiver racked her body, an inexplicable chill that had nothing to do with the cool air. She glanced at Jessica, expecting to see the same fear reflected in her eyes. But Jessica seemed lost in thought, her gaze fixed on the mansion. With a shake of her head, Sarah dismissed her own unsettling feelings as overactive imagination. They found a clearing a short distance away from the house, a patch of sunlight fighting its way through the thick canopy. Unpacking the picnic basket, Sarah tried to ignore the oppressive silence that seemed to settle over them like a shroud. Mark, ever the life of the party, attempted to lighten the mood with jokes and playful banter, but his attempts fell flat, echoing hollowly in the eerie atmosphere. Jessica, still staring at the mansion, spoke in a hushed voice, breaking the strained silence. "You know, it doesn't seem right being here again after all these years." Sarah felt a lump form in her throat. "Yeah," she managed, her voice barely a whisper. Ben, oblivious to the undercurrent of tension, stuffed a sandwich in his mouth. "Relax, guys. We're just having a picnic. Besides, Emily was just a ghost story, right?" His words, meant to be reassuring, had the opposite effect. Sarah shot him a look, the weight of their shared secret hanging heavy in the air. As they ate, a strange sensation prickled at the edges of Sarah's vision. She glanced up to see a wisp of white fluttering past the broken window on the second floor. It vanished in a blink, but the image remained imprinted on her mind. Sweat beaded on her forehead despite the cool air. Was it just the wind playing tricks on her? Or was something more sinister at play? A feeling of dread, cold and heavy, settled in her stomach. The once light-hearted picnic had morphed into a tense vigil. Every creak of the decaying mansion, every rustle in the undergrowth, sent shivers down Sarah's spine. The whispers seemed to grow louder, a chorus of unseen voices carried on the breeze. As the sun dipped below the tree line, casting long shadows across the clearing, Sarah knew a terrible mistake had been made. This seemingly innocent gathering was more than just a nostalgic trip down memory lane. It felt more like an unwelcome intrusion, a disturbance of a dark and restless past. The mansion seemed to loom closer, a silent predator waiting to pounce. The shadows deepened, stretching and twisting into grotesque shapes that danced at the edge of perception. Sarah forced a smile as they packed up the remnants of their picnic, but a chilling certainty gnawed at her. Their troubles were just beginning. Chapter 3: Whispers in the Dark. The dying embers of the picnic fire cast grotesque shadows that danced on the crumbling facade of the Blackwood mansion. The last rays of sunlight bled from the sky, leaving behind an inky blackness that swallowed the clearing whole. An oppressive silence descended, broken only by the mournful hooting of an owl from somewhere deep within the woods. An unsettling feeling clawed at Sarah's stomach. The seemingly innocent picnic now felt like a foolish intrusion into a place they shouldn't have dared to revisit. As the darkness deepened, a low rumble echoed from within the mansion, sending shivers down her spine. It wasn't thunder. It felt more deliberate, a guttural growl of displeasure. "Did you hear that?" Jessica whispered, her voice barely audible over the crackling fire. Mark, who had been trying to maintain a facade of bravado, cleared his throat. Just the wind settling, probably. But even he couldn't disguise the tremor in his voice. The once light-hearted mood evaporated, replaced by a tense silence punctuated by nervous glances towards the looming mansion. Old resentments, buried beneath years of comfortable distance, began to surface. Ben, ever the jokester, made a snide remark about Jessica being a scaredy cat, which she countered with a sharp retort about his obliviousness. The cracks in their facade, papered over with forced laughter and friendly banter, were rapidly widening. Sarah watched the exchange with a heavy heart. This wasn't just about the unsettling atmosphere of the place. It was about the burden of their shared secret, a weight that threatened to crush them all. Suddenly, a loud bang resonated from within the mansion, followed by a series of unsettling scrapes and knocks. They all froze, eyes glued to the empty windows. "Maybe it's an animal," Ben offered, his voice wavering, but none of them truly believed it. This wasn't the work of a raccoon or a stray dog. This felt deliberate, a malevolent force making its presence known. Driven by a morbid curiosity, or perhaps a desperate need to distract themselves from the growing fear, Sarah suggested exploring the mansion. Maybe whatever's making those noises is just a loose board or something. The others hesitated, their faces etched with apprehension. But in the end, the need to do something, anything, to break the suffocating tension outweighed their fear. Creaking floorboards protested under their weight as they ventured cautiously into the mansion. The musty scent of decay hung thick in the air, an oppressive blanket choking the lungs. Cobwebs, like ghostly shrouds, draped the dilapidated furniture, remnants of a life long gone. As they navigated the maze of darkened rooms, the strange noises intensified whispers on the wind, the creak of a floorboard that no one stepped on, the chilling laughter that echoed through empty halls. Jessica clung to Sarah's arm, her face pale in the flickering light of their flashlights. In a dusty library, a book lay open on a table, seemingly undisturbed for years. As Sarah tentatively reached for it, a gust of wind slammed a window shut, plunging them into darkness. A shriek tore from Jessica's throat, followed by a blood-curdling scream. Panic surged through Sarah. When the power flickered back on, revealing a ransacked room and Jessica nowhere to be seen, the horrifying reality sank in. Their shared secret, the reason they'd returned to this cursed place, had finally come back to haunt them. The whispers grew louder, now forming discernible words. Take and pay the price. They resonated through the mansion, a chilling chorus of vengeance echoing in the darkness. Sarah knew, with a bone-deep certainty, that Jessica wasn't the only one in danger. The horror had only just begun. Chapter 4. Fractured Reality. Panic clawed at Sarah's throat, a raw and primal terror that threatened to consume her. Jessica's blood-curdling scream echoed in the ravaged library, a chilling reminder of their predicament. The mansion, once a playground for childhood curiosity, now felt like a malevolent entity, toying with them in its decaying embrace. Mark, his voice barely a whisper, fumbled for his phone, the screen illuminating his ashen face. "No signal," he choked out, the words carrying a weight of despair. Alone and utterly lost, Sarah and Ben searched the darkened library frantically. The wind howled like a banshee outside, rattling the empty window frames as if in a mocking symphony. Each creak of the floorboards, each unseen shadow flitting at the edge of their vision, sent shivers down their spines. "Jessica!" Sarah called out, her voice wavering in the vast emptiness. Her own name echoed back in a distorted whisper, as if the very walls were taunting her. Then, a hidden passage revealed itself, a narrow doorway concealed behind a dusty tapestry. A wave of desperate hope washed over Sarah. Maybe Jessica had stumbled upon this secret exit in the chaos. With trembling hands, they pushed open the creaking door, a cold gust of stale air rushing out. The passage was barely wide enough for one person, the dusty floor sloping downwards into darkness. "Should we go?" Ben asked, his voice laced with trepidation. Sarah looked back at the ransacked library, a chilling premonition gnawing at her. "We have to," she said, her voice firm despite the fear knotting her stomach. They descended into the passage, the air growing colder and thicker with each step. The flickering light from their flashlights cast grotesque shadows on the damp walls, revealing disturbing symbols carved into the stone. The symbols, vaguely familiar from childhood whispers, sent a jolt of terror through Sarah. They were Emily's symbols, warnings etched into the very fabric of the house. As they ventured deeper, the whispers returned, louder and clearer this time. They spoke of a cruel fate, of a betrayal that resonated with Sarah's deepest fears. Each word felt like a shard of ice, piercing her heart, a painful echo of their buried guilt. Suddenly, a floorboard cracked beneath Ben's weight. He stumbled, landing hard on the dusty floor. As Sarah knelt to help him up, a fleeting image flickered in the darkness, a young girl with haunted eyes, her white dress stained crimson. A scream, this time Sarah's, ripped through the confines of the passage. Ben, his face pale, held her gaze, his eyes filled with a chilling mix of fear and accusation. The line between reality and their fractured psyches began to blur. Was that truly Emily's ghost, or a manifestation of their shared guilt given form by their terror? Reaching a dead end, they turned back, their steps echoing with a desperate urgency. Back in the library, the ransacked room seemed even more chaotic. A book with a faded red cover lay open on the floor, its pages filled with cryptic drawings and spidery writing. Sarah recognized it instantly, Emily's diary. As she gingerly picked it up, the whispers intensified, coalescing into a single chilling word: murderers. Tears welled up in her eyes. Emily's diary revealed a horrifying truth. It wasn't an accident, as they'd convinced themselves all these years. Their actions, fueled by fear and youthful cruelty, had sealed Emily's fate. The diary spoke of a desperate escape attempt, a struggle, and a final blood-curdling scream. The weight of their actions pressed down on Sarah like a physical burden. Tears streamed down her face, a tidal wave of long-suppressed grief and remorse. But grief was a luxury they couldn't afford. They had to find Jessica, alive or... A loud crash from upstairs shattered the tense silence. A cold dread filled Sarah's stomach. The mansion was playing with them, driving them deeper into its clutches. With newfound resolve, fueled by a desperate need to atone, Sarah and Ben exchanged a grim look. Together, they climbed the creaking staircase, heading towards the source of the sound, ready to face whatever horrors awaited them in the fractured reality of the Blackwood mansion. Chapter 5. The Price of Guilt. The splintered wood of the broken door offered a glimpse into the chaos that awaited them upstairs. Dust motes danced in the sliver of moonlight filtering through the boarded-up window, casting an eerie glow on the scene. A sense of dread, cold and suffocating, tightened Sarah's throat. Jessica? No response. Just the unsettling creak of the floorboards under their tentative steps. The air grew thick and metallic, a blood-tinged tang that sent a shiver down Sarah's spine. The room was a master bedroom, untouched by the ravages of time. A frilly canopy bed dominated the center, its once white lace, now a dingy yellow. An overturned chair lay on its side, its wooden legs poking accusingly at the air. In the corner, a figure huddled beneath a dusty sheet. Sarah's heart lurched. It could be Jessica. But as they approached, a guttural growl ripped from the form, sending them scrambling back. It wasn't Jessica. It was something else entirely. A feral creature, its features obscured by darkness, snarled at them, its eyes glowing with an unnatural red light. An echo of a memory, unlocked by the primal terror churning within Sarah, flooded her mind. Flashback. They were kids, fueled by a mix of bravado and cruelty. Sarah, Mark, and Ben daring each other to venture deeper into the forbidden mansion. They had stumbled upon this very room, then a haven of childish dreams for a young girl named Emily. Fear morphed into cruelty as they mocked her faded dollhouse and teased her raggedy teddy bear. The memory dissolved, replaced by the snarling beast before them. This was their nightmare made real, their guilt given a horrifying form. Mark, his bravado shattered, fumbled for his phone, the screen illuminating the creature with an impotent light. "It's no use," he choked out, his voice barely audible over the rapid hammering of his heart. Sarah, fueled by a desperate need to survive, shoved him aside. "We have to work together," she snapped, her voice cracking with barely controlled fear. The creature lunged, but Sarah dodged, her foot catching on the overturned chair. It fell with a crash, revealing a hidden compartment beneath the floorboards. A glint of metal caught her eye, a rusty pocket knife. Suddenly, a blood-curdling scream pierced the air. It wasn't the guttural growl of the beast, but a human scream filled with terror and pain. "Jessica!" Sarah shrieked, her voice cracking with desperation. Fear momentarily forgotten, they rushed towards the sound, the creature forgotten in their frantic search. The scream led them to a small attic room, cobwebs clinging to the broken window panes like ghostly shrouds. Jessica stood in the center, her face pale with terror, backed into a corner. But it wasn't the creature that threatened her. It was Mark. His eyes, devoid of their usual brown warmth, glowed with an unnatural red light. He held a length of rope, its frayed end dangling ominously close to Jessica's trembling form. "She doesn't deserve mercy," Mark rasped, his voice distorted and inhuman. "She wasn't with us back then." "Horror and betrayal," choked Sarah. This wasn't Mark. This was Emily's vengeful spirit, possessing him, seeking a twisted form of justice. "Mark, it's me, Sarah," she cried, her voice desperate. "Fight it." But her words seemed to have no effect. Mark lunged, his movements jerky and unnatural. A fierce struggle ensued, a desperate dance between the living and the dead, the innocent and the guilty. In the frenzy, Sarah stumbled upon Emily's diary once again. The final entry, written in a frantic hand, spoke of a hidden passage behind a loose brick in the wall. As Mark tightened the rope around Jessica's neck, Sarah lunged for a loose brick near the window. With a desperate heave, she dislodged it, revealing a dark passage. "You have a choice, Mark," Sarah screamed, her voice raw. "Save yourself or let her die." Hesitation flickered in the red-rimmed eyes. The struggle faltered. Then, with a final, soul-chilling screech, Mark collapsed to the floor, his possessed form returning to normal. Exhausted and trembling, Sarah helped Jessica to her feet. The creature from the bedroom had vanished. But as Sarah looked at the unconscious form of Mark, a horrifying truth dawned. The mansion may have claimed. Chapter 6: The Haunting Symphony. The scent of blood, metallic, hung heavy in the attic air. Mark lay sprawled on the dusty floor, his face a canvas of shock and confusion. Relief washed over Sarah, a fleeting wave in the ocean of fear that threatened to drown her. The mansion, sensing their reprieve, seemed to coil further in on itself. A monstrous groan echoed through the decaying structure, sending tremors through the floorboards. Dust rained down from the cracked ceiling, a macabre snowfall. The wind howled outside, a chilling symphony conducted by the mansion's malevolent spirit. Suddenly, a door slammed shut downstairs, the sound resonating through the attic with bone-jarring intensity. Every picture frame, every loose floorboard seemed to vibrate, a chorus of unseen whispers swelling in volume. "It's not over," Jessica whispered, her voice barely audible above the cacophony. Her eyes, wide with terror, darted around the room like a trapped animal. Sarah, clutching Emily's diary as if it were a talisman, knew she was right. They hadn't escaped the clutches of the Blackwood mansion. They were simply pawns in a game far more terrifying than they could have imagined. A guttural growl ripped through the noise, originating from the passage behind the dislodged brick. A cold wind gusted from the opening, carrying with it the stench of decay and something far more primal rage. "We have to get out of here," Sarah said, her voice surprisingly steady despite the tremor in her hands. That passage might lead to an escape route. A flicker of doubt crossed Jessica's face. But what about Mark? Sarah knew they couldn't carry him. Every second wasted could be their last. "We'll come back for him," she lied, her own voice betraying the hollowness of the promise. With a heavy heart, they squeezed through the narrow opening into the passage. It was a tight squeeze, the rough stone walls scraping uncomfortably against their skin. Blindness enveloped them, punctuated only by the faint glow of Sarah's phone flashlight. The air grew thick and stale, the oppressive silence broken only by their ragged breaths and the frantic pounding of their hearts. The whispering chorus, once confined to the attic, now seemed to emanate from the very walls of the passage, swirling around them like a malevolent fog. Suddenly, the passage twisted at an abrupt angle, disorienting them further. Sarah stumbled, landing hard on the uneven floor. As she scrambled to her feet, a blood-curdling scream pierced the silence. Spinning around, she saw Jessica frozen in place, a look of pure terror on her face. Her flashlight beam illuminated a horrifying apparition at the end of the passage, a figure shrouded in darkness, its eyes glowing with an unnatural red light. It was a monstrous manifestation of Emily's rage, a spectral echo of the pain they had inflicted. Sarah's mind raced. Emily's diary, it held the key. Frantically, she flipped through its pages, searching for anything that might help. In a desperate plea, she spoke aloud the first thing that came to mind. "Emily, we're sorry. We were just kids." As the words left her lips, a shift occurred in the spectral figure. The red glow flickered, the rage momentarily replaced by a flicker of confusion. Was it working? Hope, a fragile thing, blossomed in Sarah's chest. But before she could capitalize on it, the whispers in the passage intensified, morphing into a single, chilling word: liar. The red light flared back to life, burning brighter than before. The passage walls began to close in, suffocating them. Emily's rage, fueled by their spoken lie, had escalated. Sarah knew then that apologies wouldn't be enough. They had to atone, but how? The answer, she realized with a horrifying certainty, lay back in the attic with Mark. With a desperate shout, Sarah grabbed Jessica's hand and pulled her back through the passage. The walls pressed in closer, threatening to crush them. They burst back into the attic just as the red light from the passage disappeared. The mansion seemed to hold its breath for a moment, the symphony of terror momentarily silenced. Sarah looked down at Mark. He was stirring, his eyes fluttering open. They were running out of time. Now, they had a choice: escape through the unknown passage or face Emily's wrath with Mark, hoping their shared guilt offered some semblance of redemption. As Emily's spectral form began to solidify once more in the corner of the attic, Sarah knew they had reached a turning point in their descent into the dark heart of the Blackwood mansion. Chapter 7: Desperate Choices. Emily's spectral form coalesced in the corner of the attic, solidifying from a horrifying apparition into a young girl with a haunting sadness in her eyes. Her white dress shimmered with an ethereal glow, the red stains from Sarah's memory replaced by a spectral white. The room temperature plummeted, sending shivers down Sarah's spine despite the urgency coursing through her veins. "Emily," Sarah called out, her voice trembling slightly. "We didn't mean to hurt you. We were just scared, stupid kids." Jessica, still clutching Sarah's arm tightly, looked up at her with wide, terrified eyes. Mark, finally regaining consciousness, scrambled to his feet, his gaze flickering between them and the spectral figure. Emily didn't respond, her hollow eyes fixed on Sarah. The whispers in the room, however, intensified, morphing into a single word: lies. Sarah felt a wave of despair wash over her. Fear wouldn't appease Emily. But what would? Then, a memory flickered in her mind, a forgotten detail from Emily's diary. An entry about a cherished, stuffed animal, a white rabbit named Mr. Buns. "Mr. Buns?" Sarah cried out, desperation lacing her voice. "Do you remember Mr. Buns, Emily?" A flicker of recognition crossed the spectral girl's face. The red glow in her eyes dimmed slightly, replaced by a flicker of longing. "We didn't take Mr. Buns," Sarah continued, her voice raw with emotion. "We never meant to hurt you." Jessica, understanding Sarah's play, chimed in, her voice trembling. "We just wanted to play. We didn't know." The whispers wavered, the word lies replaced by a mournful sigh. Emily's spectral form seemed to shrink, the ethereal glow waning. The air in the room felt lighter. But before Sarah could celebrate their apparent breakthrough, a guttural roar ripped through the room. The loose brick in the wall crumbled further, revealing a monstrous creature with glowing red eyes, its form vaguely familiar. It was the creature Sarah had seen earlier, but this time its rage was directed not at them, but at Emily. A horrifying truth dawned on Sarah. Emily wasn't the vengeful spirit. She was a victim trapped in the mansion, forever reliving her fear and anger. The creature, A manifestation of the true evil that had taken her life was now threatened by Emily's potential release. "She wasn't the one who hurt you, Emily," Sarah screamed, her voice filled with desperate hope. "It was the one behind the wall." Emily's spectral form swiveled towards the creature, her eyes filled with a newfound clarity. The red in her eyes, however, wasn't gone, but replaced by a cold, steely resolve. With a shriek that echoed like the cry of a tormented soul, Emily lunged at the creature. The attic erupted in a cacophony of screams and roars. Furniture toppled, dust swirled, and the very structure of the mansion seemed to groan in protest. Sarah and Jessica huddled together, watching in horror as the spectral Emily grappled with the monstrous entity. The air crackled with a spectral energy, a battle between victim and tormentor. Suddenly, a sickening crack resonated through the attic. A portion of the ceiling crumbled, revealing a sliver of the moonlit sky. As the moonlight streamed through the gap, Emily's spectral form seemed to solidify further. In a desperate act of self-sacrifice, she shoved the creature back through the hole in the wall. With a final, heart-wrenching scream, Emily too vanished, sucked into the moonlight along with the creature. A deafening silence descended upon the attic. The whispers were gone, the air no longer oppressive. Relief washed over Sarah, quickly replaced by a crushing weight of grief. Tears streamed down her face, a mixture of sorrow for Emily and a chilling realization of their own role in the tragedy. Mark limped towards them, his face pale. What happened?" Sarah looked at him, her voice thick with emotion. "She's gone," she whispered, "and we have to live with what we did." As the dust settled and the first rays of dawn painted the sky a pale orange, they emerged from the attic, survivors of a nightmarish ordeal. The mansion, no longer a place of childhood memories, loomed before them, a silent monument to the past, forever stained by their transgression. They left the Blackwood mansion behind, forever haunted by their encounter with Emily, a grim reminder of the consequences of their childhood cruelty. The weight of their past wouldn't vanish, but perhaps, by acknowledging it, they could finally begin to heal. Chapter 8. Whispers Remain. The first rays of dawn peeked through the skeletal remains of the Blackwood mansion, casting long, accusing shadows across the clearing. Sarah, Jessica, and Mark emerged from the gaping maw of the attic, blinking against the harsh light. The air, once thick with the cloying scent of decay, now held the crisp tang of morning dew and damp earth. Yet, a heavy silence lingered, a stark contrast to the cacophony of the previous night. "Is it over?" Jessica whispered, her voice barely audible. Her eyes, red-rimmed and hollow, mirrored the exhaustion etched on Sarah and Mark's faces. Sarah stared at the crumbling facade of the mansion, a monument to a darkness they had unwittingly awakened. The events of the past night felt surreal, a nightmarish blend of terror and revelation. Emily, the victim they'd spent years trying to forget, had become the key to their survival. But at what cost? The memory of Emily's spectral form battling the monstrous entity, her final heart-wrenching scream, sent shivers down Sarah's spine. Was that truly the end? A disquieting feeling gnawed at her gut. As if responding to her unspoken fear, a cold gust of wind swept through the clearing, carrying with it a faint, chilling whisper, "Not yet." Their blood ran cold. Had they been mistaken? Was Emily's vengeance incomplete? Panic surged through them, the fragile peace shattered by the chilling reminder of their transgression. Mark, his voice tight with fear, clutched his arm. "We have to get out of here, now." Without a word, they stumbled towards their car, parked haphazardly at the edge of the clearing. Each rustle of leaves, each creak of a branch, sent them scrambling, their nerves on edge. The once familiar path back to the road now seemed to twist and turn, the towering trees morphing into menacing figures in the growing light. Finally, they reached the car, collapsing into their seats with ragged breaths. Sarah fumbled with the keys, her hands trembling. As the engine roared to life, a sense of relief washed over them, fragile and temporary. They had escaped the clutches of the mansion, but had they truly escaped Emily's wrath? Just as they were about to pull away, a white object fluttered down from the broken window on the second floor, landing softly on the hood of the car. It was Mr. Buns, Emily's cherished stuffed rabbit, its once pristine white fur, now a dingy gray. A wave of sorrow crashed over Sarah. Mr. Buns, a symbol of Emily's innocence, a stark reminder of their childhood cruelty. The whispers, faint but persistent, echoed in the car, "Remember." They sped away from the Blackwood mansion, leaving behind a crumbling monument and a past they could never truly outrun. The weight of their actions, a heavy burden they had tried to bury for years, now threatened to consume them. In the weeks that followed, the whispers never truly faded. They lingered in the dead of night, a chilling reminder of their encounter with Emily. Sleep became a luxury, replaced by restless nights, plagued by nightmares and guilt. Jessica, once vibrant and carefree, became withdrawn and haunted. Mark, seeking solace at the bottom of a bottle, only seemed to amplify the whispers in his head. As for Sarah, she carried the weight of their shared secret with a heavy heart. One day, while clearing out the attic, Sarah stumbled upon a dusty box. Inside, nestled amongst old photographs and forgotten toys, lay a leather-bound diary. It wasn't Emily's diary, but her own, filled with childhood scribbles and faded memories. As she flipped through the pages, a single entry jumped out at her, its childish scrawl a stark indictment of their actions. "We scared Emily today. It was fun." The memory flooded back, a wave of shame washing over her. The fear, the cruelty, all justified by childhood ignorance. But the consequences, she realized with a crushing weight, were far-reaching and unforgivable. The whispers, for a moment, seemed to intensify, a chorus of accusation. But then, a new sound emerged, faint and almost imperceptible, a sigh, tinged with a hint of forgiveness. Sarah closed the diary, a tear rolling down her cheek. The whispers never truly faded, a constant reminder of their past. But perhaps, with time and acceptance, they could learn to live with them, carrying the weight of their actions as a solemn lesson, forever etched in their hearts. The chilling encounter with Emily might be over, but the echoes of the past, like the whispers carried on the wind, would forever linger.